So if I look like an unkempt beauty, it's because I am, and also because I genuinely have no idea what the fuck has been happening ever since I saw the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The ending of this show was so fucking stupid that it actually made me like lose faith in God until I remembered that Satan exists and he probably made this fucking screenplay. Never mind that the entire series was a meandering bullshit factory where they were apparently trying to chase after Antifa, I mean the Flag Smashers, who were traveling around the world with a cadre of godlike super soldiers. And apparently, we were supposed to think that U.S. agent was the bad guy because he killed one, even though the guy was a member of an anarchic terrorist group. Like, the moment that you dive into what the fucking Flag Smashers actually believe in, you begin to understand how insane the writers of this show are. Because they genuinely were trying to portray the Flag Smashers as good guys, even though they wanted to create a essentially anarchic one world government, or not even a government, because they felt it was bad that finger quotes refugees were being kept in finger quotes cages and finger quotes concentration camps. There's going to be a lot of finger quotes here, people, because of the whole thing with Thanos 5 years ago, which is just mind numbing. It's like, what the fuck do you people want? 5 years ago, an alien god snapped his fingers and vaporized half of the fucking universe. Then those people reappeared out of a goddamn wormhole, and the world is just supposed to what? Go the fuck on and pretend like it never fucking happened? You know, Pixar didn't happen, asshole. How the fuck does that work? The resources, the money, the time, the housing, the God knows what else that would be required to give these people homes, give these people a life, give these people back the world that they lived in before are just outrageous. How in the world would anyone be stupid enough to honestly think that a bunch of homeless refugees from nowhere could just appear on your doorstep and all of a sudden that they're just supposed to be treated like neighbor? Oh wait, yeah, I forgot this was written in California. But I could forgive all that if not for some other things that are even more retarded in the fucking plot. And that again, that's not even going into the fact that US agent just watched his best friend get his neck snapped in one episode, kills one of the terrorists, by the way, who had just got done vaporizing a hospital. So God only knows how many people died there. Even if it was one, that was still an act of domestic terrorism. But okay, fine. And then somehow or another, US agent is the bad guy there. But again, I could forgive all that. If not for the fact that this is literally the weakest Captain America that I have ever seen in my entire fucking life. I genuinely was trying to hold in a fart during the entire last fight sequence of episode 6 because I thought that the stiff breeze might knock Sam Wilson over. This guy isn't just a failed Captain America. He isn't just a failed superhero. He's a failed human being. It is literally implausible that anyone could be that bad at fighting. And maybe it's just because I was kind of a bully when I grew the fuck up, but I can honestly tell you that as a kid, I could honestly have beaten this guy up. I mean, when I was like in the 8th grade, I could have fucking bent this asshole over a table. And somehow or another, he's going to be the defender of the world. That's not even going into the inane bullshit when someone actually sees him flying through the air, a guy who's been called the Falcon his entire fucking superhero career. They see him flying through the air, and one of the people in the audience that's watching him, do all this shit and failed doing it, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. One of the people says, "Yeah, that's the Falcon," and then another person who's also black says, "No, that's Captain America." No, it's not Captain America because Captain America knew how to throw a punch. This thing wasn't Captain America and the fucking Winter Soldier like they said in the end credits. This was Anthony Mackie trying to get a paycheck and the Winter Soldier. And they might as well have made it about the Winter Soldier, even though his entire story arc was so mangled and nonsensical. It was, well, it was basically the plot to Scott Pilgrim. And I mean that literally. It was like the Scott Pilgrim plot, but taken into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you've never seen the movie Scott Pilgrim versus the World, here's a fucking summary. Spoilers. Basically, there's this loser walking around in, I think, Seattle or something, and he has this gorgeous Asian girl throwing herself legs open at him through the entire fucking movie. But the only person he wants to have sex with is Ramona Flowers, or some chubby looking chick. And the only way he can get her to have sex with him is by murdering her ex boyfriends. Basically, they did a non-violent version of that, where for some unknown reason, this hot Asian girl spends a good solid episode or two throwing herself at the Winter Soldier because she wants to fuck him. And he just wants to travel around the world and talk to the families of the people he murdered while he was being mind controlled by fucking Hydra. And he thinks that by talking to these people and telling them that he killed their family members, somehow that's going to help them. And they actually show this in the fucking episode, by the way, when he goes and finds an aging Asian man who is in his fucking late 80s, who is mourning the death of his son even now. And he walks up to the guy at the end of the fucking episode and says, "I was the one that killed your son." And the guy's only reaction is, "What?" I would have shot the motherfucker right there. "Oh, you killed my son. Let me return the favor, ass wife." But even if they had fucking gone with his story, it would have been better than going with Sam Wilson's story, because Sam Wilson's story is literally just the movie Soul Food without any character in it. It's basically him and his ugly sister arguing over whether or not they're gonna fucking be able to keep a boat that belonged to their parents. I expected Whitney Houston to break in at any moment and start saying, "Count on me through thick and thin," because apparently that's literally what they were attempting to fucking channel. Some sort of bizarre black Hallmark movie. And the part that really cracked my fucking skull was near the beginning, where Sam Wilson and his sister are talking to a guy that runs a bank, and he says like, "Oh, it looks like you don't have the money to keep this boat anymore." And he's like, "Well, I don't have any money. I'm a superhero." Excuse me, motherfucker? You don't have any money from being a superhero. So that means that you've been traveling around the world with a suit of combat armor that allows you to fly at supersonic speeds with laser cannons and a self aware combat drone, and you had no money to support this at all. So I guess it was falling from the hands of Jesus like wine or something. So somehow or another, you've been doing this all this time, fighting super soldiers and saving the world and stopping an alien god from wiping out mankind, and nobody gave you any money, nobody gave you any credit, nobody gave you any help. You were just meandering around doing that bullshit. What? Why? This is why, like, whenever I hear some sort of grumpy cat uh, comic book critic like Linkara, or God forbid even Razorfist, who I actually appreciate as a critic, when they say something like, "Oh, Rob Liefeld was a terrible writer. He was a horrible artist because he didn't know how to draw feet properly." Yeah, because that's the first thing I think about when I pick up a comic, my foot fetish. But when I hear people say stuff like that, it makes my fucking soul hurt, because Rob Liefeld was intelligent enough, and you see this in some of the first issues of Youngblood, to come up with the idea that superheroes would be like celebrities. They would have endorsement deals and stuff like that, star in movies and shit like that, so that they would have, money, that a superhero would have a side hustle. But in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're supposed to genuinely believe that this guy, whose entire fucking power set is based around a suit of battle armor so sophisticated that it makes a fucking F-22 Raptor look like the Wright Flyer, was meandering around the earth doing all this shit, fighting supervillains, and he did all of it all of it for free. Nobody ever paid him. There was no mercenary activity. He didn't have any help. Nobody even just gave him money for saving their lives. The Shadow had more of a logical fucking worldview than him, because at least when the Shadow would save your life, you would belong to him, and so you would be part of his network of informants and stuff. That actually made more sense. They could have literally made that, and it would have made more fucking sense than what they actually said. I mean, like, let's just go back for a moment also about how weak they made the Falcon look. There was a guy who beat the ever living shit out of the Falcon in the first fucking episode, some French asshole who I assumed was a super soldier because of just how he was able to rape Sam Wilson. But somehow or another, we're supposed to actually believe that that was a normal guy. So when Sam Wilson goes to fight actual super soldiers, he, of course, gets completely destroyed by them in seconds, except for one scene that came out of nowhere where somehow he was able to throw Captain America's shield to take out 5 of them at once. Meanwhile, this is after literally one of them, who was so short that she came up to my fucking knee and looked like she weighed about as much as my hand, was able to beat him nearly to death. So that means that he was able to overpower several Captain Americas at once with one hit, but one Captain America was able to kill him, or almost kill him anyway, in seconds. Oh, that reminds me. They completely destroyed the logic of Captain America's origin in this, because because story this fucking story infers that there was somehow a previous group of Captain Americas that were created before Steve Rogers became Captain America. So what that means is that Dr. Erskine, I believe that's how his name is pronounced, who created the Captain America super soldier serum, tested it out on a group of black men before he actually made Captain America, and then used a better version on Captain America, which doesn't make any sense, by the way, because that doesn't explain how Hydra got their hands on it, how they were able to make super soldiers on their own, which we saw in the original Winter Soldier. It doesn't explain how they were able to make the Winter Soldier. It doesn't explain how they were able to get some scientist who lived in a basement to make a more advanced model of this shit. And it doesn't explain why none of these people were affected by the side effects, allegedly, that Isaiah Bradley and his other friends were affected by. Supposedly, they injected these people with the super soldier serum and they disintegrated. And that just makes no sense whatsoever, because if that were the case, then you'd think that something like that would have happened to Steve Rogers, to all of the Flag Smashers, to Bucky Barnes, to all of the people that work for Hydra, and none of them were in any way affected by this shit in the same way. Isaiah Bradley goes on to talk about like how they want a blonde, blue-eyed Captain America, but then he immediately shifts over and says that all of his black friends who were injected with the super soldier serum disintegrated in his hands, that every single one of them turned to dust faster than Lot's wife, and somehow or another he was the only one that survived. Well, here's a fucking theory, princess. If all the black people that they injected with this stuff immediately exploded, and the only people that didn't drop dead where they were standing were a bunch of white people, maybe that's why they decided to use blonde, blue-eyed people to use the fucking super soldier serum on, because those are the only people that could apparently survive it. But then they're also supposed to believe that Isaiah Bradley was captured by the United States government, imprisoned for several fucking years, and experimented upon to make more super soldier serum, which again makes no sense, because where did Erskine get his super soldier serum? Where did Hydra get his? Where did that fucktard in the basement that made the super soldier serum for the Flag Smashers get his supply of it? The only way that this would make sense, and by the way, this is actually literally the only way this would make sense, is if the United States government developed their own super soldier serum, used it on these black guys, it failed. They went to Erskine, got his super soldier serum, created Steve Rogers, but this was after Hydra got their super soldier serum, independent of Erskine and the black guys. So that's 3 different fucking super soldier serums. And then Hydra used that to create their super soldiers. And then somehow a 4th guy was able to accidentally stumble upon the super soldier serum, I guess while he was trying to make fentanyl in his basement or something. And none of that makes any sense. They didn't just screw up the fucking origin of Captain America and MCU. If we're supposed to actually believe that this is the new origin of Captain America in the comics, which seems to be what they're trying to do with this red, white, and black bullshit, if that literally is what they're implying, then that means that there was at minimum at least 3 different versions of the super serum that were created, and that's assuming that we don't include the canonical versions of the super soldier serum, which more people were injected with besides just Steve Rogers and Isaiah Bradley. Holy shit. To say that this plot line is mangled would be like saying Ed Gein was a little off kilter. But I could forgive all that, or not so much forgive, but I could at least overlook how stupid it is, if not for the fact that the last 10 minutes or so of this fucking final episode literally was just Sam Wilson standing in place and trying to say that Antifa, I mean the Flag Smashers, were good guys because they were fighting for what now? Because as far as we're able to actually discern from the plot, the Flag Smashers were a bunch of anarchic bullshit festivists that actually believed that if they created some sort of unitary one world dictatorship that had no borders, that it would somehow bring mankind together. You know who else thought that was a good idea? Hydra! But the craziest part of it is when Sam Wilson actually looks down on the fucking leaders of the world and says to them, there were people who were willing to die for her beliefs, referring to the Flag Smasher. There were people that were willing to die for her beliefs. And he says that as if to say somehow she was right because there were people that were willing to sacrifice themselves for what she believed in. Check this out, genius. There were people who were willing to die for Adolf Hitler's belief. Does that mean the Holocaust was a good idea? There were people who were willing to die for David Duke's beliefs. So how many Klan rallies are you going to show up to, black in America? There were people who were willing to die for Ted Bundy's beliefs. And I know there were because some of them sent him love letters in prison after he murdered several people. So to say that there's someone that would be willing to die for her beliefs doesn't somehow make her beliefs correct or even logical. All that it means is that there was someone else in the world that agreed with her. There's someone that is willing to die or fight for everyone's beliefs, because unless your beliefs are so insane that it causes the space-time continuum to unravel, so you basically have to be Thanos at that point. Unless you are literally that fucking crazy, there is someone willing to die for everyone's beliefs. If I literally went on TV and said that I believe that we should get all the horses in the world and set them on fire in one gigantic pile, within a matter of hours, I can have thousands of people all over the world saying that that would be a good idea. That doesn't mean that it's logical. That means that there are people who are willing to believe what the fuck you're saying. Anyone would believe what the fuck you're saying about anything that you fucking say. That doesn't mean that it's a fucking good idea. You know why? Because there were people who thought that Osama bin Laden was a good idea. There were some people who thought Al Qaeda was a good idea. And there were people that were willing to die for Osama bin Laden's beliefs. You know how I know that? Because they flew a plane or 3 into the World Trade Center back in 2001 and vaporized 3,000 people. So there's literally thousands of people willing to die for almost anything. All you have to do is word it properly. But Sam Wilson is standing there screaming his lungs out at the leaders of the world, trying to tell them that they're supposed to give free shit to everyone like some sort of socialist utopia. Because if they don't do it, then all these other people that are willing to die for the beliefs of Flag Smasher are somehow going to rise up and do what? Start another fucking revolution? We already had 3 of those so far. We had Hydra, Thanos, and the Flag Smasher. And so far, we've killed all of them. Well, maybe not Thanos. I think they're going to bring him back or something. Oh, by the way, there was a 4th one. I just remembered, Loki. So that's 4 fucking times that we've had global uprisings or interstellar uprisings in the case of Thanos, where people were willing to die for their fucking beliefs and try to wipe out all of mankind to achieve it on at least 2 different occasions. The other 2, they were just trying to conquer the fucking earth. It's so fucking insane how utterly retarded the ending of this miniseries was. It was almost as bad as the ending of Game of Thrones. Well, no, okay, it wasn't that bad. It was approaching as bad as the ending of Game of Thrones. To be perfectly honest, this was approaching the end of Lost in terms of how stupid it was. I'd almost say it was as bad as Last Jedi. I would almost say that, but I don't want to be struck down by God. This show was literally arguing that anarchism, socialism, and terrorism were a good idea because I guess some people were misplaced or displaced or unplaced. It's not the government's fault that these people were destroyed by Thanos. It's not the government's thought that a literal alien god used a glove that was made for him by Tyrion Lannister's taller brother to snap his fingers and kill all these people. They weren't displaced because of some sort of diaspora or refugee crisis. They were displaced because they fell into a wormhole. How fucking insane do you have to be to genuinely believe that people are going to disappear for 5 years, which means that, by the way, other people are being born during that 5-year period. So it's not like the world came to a complete halt at that point. People disappeared for 5 years. They suddenly reappeared out of literal thin air because the alien god, and I can't emphasize that enough, who destroyed them finally got his fucking ass handed to him by the Avengers. Oh, by the way, got his ass handed to him by the blonde, blue-eyed version of Captain America, who was worthy of Mjolnir. So apparently he wasn't nearly as racist as Isaiah Bradley thought he was. I don't know. Maybe the Norse really were racist or something. I mean, they were all blonde. Apparently, that's supposed to be some sort of a war crime in this universe. But anyway, after the alien god who had killed half of the fucking human race and half of the universe too, by the way, I don't see the Flag Smashers crying about what's going on Planet X or anything. But after that finally died down, and all the people who disappeared literally appeared again out of thin fucking air. The Flag Smashers assume that somehow the government, by the way, that's just beginning to rebuild after a cataclysm of such staggering proportions that if the Holocaust happened every day for the next week, it wouldn't come close to the level of damage that Thanos caused, not just on a physical level, but on a metaphysical level, on a psychological level, on a national level, on an economic level. Half of the human race died and then came back to life out of nowhere, including, ironically, the Winter Soldier. Half of the human race vanished into thin air and then came back to life out of fucking nowhere. And Flag Smasher and her idiot friends genuinely had the fucking nerve to assume that it was somehow the government's fault that they didn't have money anymore. I guess kind of like somehow Sam Wilson thinks it's the government's fault that he doesn't have money, even though he's been saving the world multiple times and almost died fighting Thanos on at least 2 separate occasions. And then the whole thing at the end where they have this huge golden statue, a literal golden calf. Just, I mean, think about that for a second. They had a literal golden calf here. They had a giant golden statue of George Floyd, Isaiah Bradley, in the middle of a museum dedicated to Captain America, the man who died to save humanity from Thanos. And they decided to replace his memory with a giant statue of some guy from World War II that nobody's ever heard of, and with good reason. Nobody in the fucking series actually ever said this to Isaiah Bradley, but if I had been in the fucking room when that character was there, somehow in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I exist in this reality. But if I had been there, I'd have told him this to his face. You can talk about the red tails and about how you want to save your friends from POW camps and all that. You could go through all the I don't want to pledge allegiance to the flag no more and hold up your fists and talking about I can't breathe and all that shit. All you fucking want. What you genuinely did when you volunteered, because remember, Captain America had to volunteer for the super soldier formula. He didn't like just get chosen out of fucking nowhere. When you volunteered along with all of your friends to participate in the super soldier program, it wasn't because of the red tails. It wasn't because of the movie 42 bringing, power to your race or something like that. You wanted power. You chose to be part of the super soldier program because you wanted power. You wanted to be just like Steve Rogers. You wanted to be a 7-foot tall Superman who was capable of ripping a tank apart with his bare hands. You wanted to stand 10 feet tall above all the white people who had treated you like shit in your life. You wanted to be a god in men's clothing. And then you fucking got to Babylon and found out that the waters didn't taste so sweet. Because you realized at the last fucking second that not only did they view you as a weapon, they viewed you as a poorly made weapon. And again, that's assuming that this timeline even makes any sense. I would genuinely believe that this took place in some sort of alternate universe or something. And considering that the plot of the next Doctor Strange film involves him going to a parallel reality or three, I think it actually makes sense that this would be some alternate reality. Because that would actually explain how fucking stupid and utterly tangled the fucking canon has become. But putting all that aside, like, let's just pretend for a moment that the canon actually makes fucking sense in this story. Isaiah Bradley volunteered, along with all of his friends, volunteered for the super soldier program. They weren't forced, they weren't asked, they volunteered because they wanted power. There's literally no difference between what they did and what Red Skull did. There's only a minor difference between what they did and Thanos did, because Thanos wanted power because he thought that it would be a good idea to do what he was doing. These people wanted power and nothing else. They wanted to gain power. They wanted to gain superhuman abilities. They wanted it now, so they volunteered for a government project that would inject them with God knows what. They never questioned the logic of it. And then when they all started to fucking die, they suddenly felt bad about it, except for this one guy who has a few scars or whatever, because allegedly they were holding him prisoner. God only knows how, because, some of the shit that we've seen Captain America do, including stopping a punch from Thanos. Stopping a punch from Thanos. Okay? So some of the things we've seen Captain America do shows us that anyone who's injected with the super soldier serum would have to be fist fighting with Yahweh to ever lose a fucking battle. But somehow they were able to imprison Isaiah Bradley for 30 years and experiment on him. What? When the fuck did this happen? Was it before or after World War II? They never actually make it clear, by the way, because he's talking about like the red tails and stuff like that, and talking about like how he was volunteering for this program and shit. So you think it must have happened sometime during the Second World War. But that doesn't make any sense because the guy who made the super soldier serum was dead. So what then? Oh, and by the way, Hydra had the super soldier serum because we see in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, they created the Winter Soldier, they created other super soldiers. So that means that the government didn't even have to experiment on him to get the super soldier serum. They could have literally just stolen it from Hydra. They could have literally just taken it from the bad guys. And it's not like it would have been that fucking difficult. They had superhumans. They had other superhumans besides Captain America. We know they did because it's established the superhumans have existed in the MCU for fucking ever. So they could have easily just stolen the super soldier serum from Hydra if it was so hard to get their hands on. And they didn't do it because they wanted to hold a black man hostage and cut off parts of his skin to use him to do what? Make another super soldier serum? Well, then where the fuck was this super soldier serum? See, that's what I mean when I say that the canon in this is completely tangled. Because the only way that any of that would make sense, any of it, would be that he would have had to have been the original fucking super soldier prior to Captain America. But if he was the original super soldier prior to Captain America, he couldn't have been imprisoned for 30 years. Because that would mean that somehow or another, he and his friends were going around. By the way, this is the crazy part. If we are to attempt to make his story make sense, this means that he and his friends were going around fighting the Nazis as superhumans during World War II, and it would have to be during World War II, and I'll get to that in a second. During World War II, and nobody, including Captain America, was aware of this. The public wasn't aware of this. There was an entire army of at least 5, I think he said, superhumans running around fighting the Nazis during World War II, and nobody fucking noticed them. It never made it out to the public, whatever. Then why the fuck was everyone so hyped up about Captain America? Apparently, there was a dozen of these assholes. So why not just go get some of them? And that's assuming that all this happened before World War II. Because if we're assuming that this happened after World War II, like in Vietnam or something like that, it makes even less sense. Because A, Hydra had the super soldier serum already. B, they had already created the Winter Soldier. C, they had already created their own superhumans. And most important of all, if they had been experimenting on him this long to figure out how the super soldier serum works, why weren't they able to reproduce it? It couldn't have been that hard because I can't stress this enough. Hydra had their own super soldier serum. So that would have to imply one of two things. One, the United States government was just torturing him for fun, or two, the people that ran Hydra were apparently smarter than Dr. Erskine, the guy who created the super soldier serum, because they were able to spitball it and figure out how to make their own out of thin air. Hail Hydra! For fuck's sake. This entire miniseries falls apart in a matter of seconds like a Jenga tower the second that you ask why. Why is the Winter Soldier going around telling the families of the people he murdered that he killed their family members? Why have none of them retaliated? Why was he being psychologically analyzed at the beginning of the series? Why was the Asian chick trying to come onto him? Why would he tell the old man that he killed his son? Why was Sam Wilson penniless? Why was he trying to hold on to his family's boat? Where the fuck was his family during the blip? Did they all disappear too? What happened to Isaiah Bradley? Did he disappear? Did his grandson disappear? Did his grandson inherit his powers? Because they tried to say some bullshit like that in the fucking comics that he became Messiah X or Malcolm X or whatever the fuck kind of X or something like that. Did that happen? Did he disappear? What the fuck was going on during this? Did the Flag Smashers disappear? Did the guy who made their super soldier serum disappear? We don't know. I mean, the only thing that we are actually clear on is apparently that what's her name, blonde chick Carter, is apparently the power broker, which means absolutely nothing. Because we find out that she doesn't have access to the super soldier serum. All she has access to is some information. Information that most of these terrorist organizations who have super soldiers of their own would be able to get their hands on like that. And then we see at the end that the Contessa, the chick that you would assume was the power broker, who was actually trying to, do something with her life, shows up with U.S. agent and says that he's going to be her like personal mercenary from now on. And this is supposed to be a bad thing, I guess, because the series has the same problem as WandaVision. It makes sense up to a certain point, and then it falls off a cliff. WandaVision made sense up to the last episode or so when they suddenly revealed that Quicksilver from the Fox universe was Ralph, and that all the people in the town are being mind controlled by Wanda, but she's supposed to be the good guy. They should have literally just ended WandaVision on that Agatha All Along song, because that was the only thing about it that actually made it worthwhile. The second that episode was over, the entire thing fucking imploded. And that's the same thing with this shit. They literally should have just ended it with the whole reveal about Isaiah Bradley, because at least then it would have ended on a cliffhanger. Now it's ended on a rant by some guy dressed up like Captain America, pretending that he knows how to fight, saying that apparently Antifa are good guys because someone believes in what they believed in. Completely forgetting for a moment that there are people that genuinely believe in what Jeffrey Dahmer believed in. So that would mean that, logically speaking, a serial killer and a rapist are just as honorable as the Flag Smashers and Antifa. So that's me rambling incoherently about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm sorry, I meant Captain America and the Winter Soldier, because we're supposed to believe that Sam Wilson is the new Captain America. You know, uh, yeah, I'll believe that around the same time that Rarity the Unicorn kicks in my door and starts begging me for a fucking sex run or something. I have no goddamn idea what they were trying to do with this show or the ridiculous ending of this show. The only thing I can possibly imagine is that they were genuinely trying to make some sort of statement about that shit that happened in Minneapolis and the border crisis. And then they decided to take those concepts and extrapolate them onto a TV show about superhumans. I give the fuck up.